terrorise towns and villages across the region.
There was a guy, short, sort of dumpy guy, looking up the hill, and I thought, oh, maybe it was some kids who got a taxi home, you know, and had done a runner, and he was chasing them. And then he turned around and stared at me. It just had this absolutely huge, like, sniper rifle.
A massive manhunt followed. 52-year-old taxi driver Derek Bird was on the run for hours before apparently killing himself.
We've found a body in a wooded area of Boot, which we believe to be Mr. Bird, together with a firearm.
The shootings send shockwaves throughout the country. This is the scene live in Whitehaven, where a police news conference is due to begin shortly. Good afternoon. A gunman has shot dead at least 5 people in a space of shootings across Cumbria. At least 25 other people have been injured. The killer, a 52-year-old local man called Derek Bird, was hunted by police across the county. An hour and a half later, police found his body in woodland. They believe he killed himself. Well, this is how events unfolded. The first reports came in at 10:35 this morning of shots being fired in Duke Street in the town of Whitehaven. Shortly after that, police urged people around the area in West Cumbria to stay indoors. At 12:15, police confirmed that a number of people had been injured in a series of shootings in the towns of Whitehaven, Egremont and Seascale. Then, at 12:40, police announced they were searching for Derek Bird, a 52-year-old taxi driver from the village of Rowra near Frizzington. Soon afterwards, they confirmed there had been a number of fatalities. At 1 o'clock, police said the suspect had abandoned his car near the village of Boot and was believed to be fleeing on foot. And then, shortly before 2 o'clock, police reported they'd found a body in a wooded area of Boot, later revealed to be that of Derek Bird. This report from our correspondent, Nicola Pearson.
This is Derek Bird, a 52-year-old taxi driver who carried out a series of shootings in the quiet area of West Cumbria, where he lived and worked. The killings began here in Whitehaven.
A man came in and asked if he could use the phone. He said that there was a man running about with a shotgun. So I rang 999 and I put the gentleman on the phone, and he spoke to the police. And he gave them a description of the man and the vehicle registration number. And while he was actually on the phone, we heard the first shot ring out. And then he carried on. He sort of said that he'd heard a shot to the police. And then we heard another shot. And the police said they were aware of the situation. And then we got off the phone, and the next minute the police arrived.
Frightened locals and shopkeepers ran for cover. Police officers who rushed from the nearby station ordered them to stay indoors.
I drove into the village and found a seriously injured man in a Range Rover car, and then bystanders came and said, can you come up? And I had to go and see 2 bodies who were further through the village. So we're talking about people with serious shotgun injuries lying on the pavements in the village. It was fairly horrific.
From Whitehaven, the taxi driver made his way to Egremont, then further south to Seascale, shooting at people randomly. As events unfolded, police mounted a huge search operation on land and in the air, telling those in the area to keep out of sight. Every armed unit in Cumbria was drafted in. They followed the 52-year-old to nearby Boot, where police say Bird took his own life.
I heard a shot outside at 2 o'clock. It felt to me as though that was something, and it didn't carry on. There was no gunfight. Very shortly afterwards, the air ambulance helicopter landed in the field just over the road there, quickly attended by some police vehicles and an ambulance. Some kind of transfer went on, and they flew off very quickly, and within moments on the news they'd let us know that they'd got his body.
We've found a body in a wooded area of Boot, which we believe to be Mr. Bird, together with a firearm. A formal ID will of course be made later. We have issued a helpline number for those people who have got relatives who may have been injured. That number is 0800 096 0095, and it's to help those concerned relatives who may wish to know how their friends and family are. Our focus now is to try and work out what has caused this and where Mr. Bird has been over the last 24 hours, and in particular the last few hours. And I would plead to anyone who has seen him or has seen any of the incidents, please come forward, speak to us and help us to piece together exactly what has happened in this very, very tragic set of circumstances.
Prime Minister David Cameron gave this update in the Commons.
Police were called to Whitehaven at 10:35 this morning after shots were fired by a man. And I regret to report that a number of people have been shot and that at least 5 people have died.
Those treating the wounded say at least 25 people have been hurt at 11 crime scenes. Police will try to establish whether Derek Bird was licensed to have a gun and what led him to carry out such appalling crimes. Nicola Pearson, BBC News.
Let's go to Whitehaven now and get the latest from our correspondent there, Chris Stewart. A terrible day for the people of Cumbria, and it is feared, Chris, that the number of fatalities could well rise.
My information is that, yes, what David Cameron told us a little earlier today, that there were 5 people dead. My information is that the figure is actually higher than 5. I don't know quite how high, but the figure of 25 injuries is one which tallies with what I've been told as well. We're waiting here from Uncle Stuart Hyde, who's the Deputy Chief Constable of Cumbria. He's going to come along and give us the latest update, and I'm expecting him at that update to tell us that there are more than 5 fatalities in this incredible and somewhat bizarre series of crimes. This man, Derek Bird, started here at 10:30 when he shot dead a man in a taxi rank there. I do have a name for the victim, but we are not entirely sure that all of his family have been told what's happened to him, so at the minute we're probably better off not mentioning that man's name. From here, Derek Bird then went from village to village to village, first in a silver Picasso car, and then, I gather, in a black Astra, and everywhere he visited became a crime scene. He was apparently shooting at random, although the first killing here appears to have been targeted, and some people here are suggesting that it is to do with a business dispute he'd become embroiled in. What happened after that appears to have been random. He has gone, as I say, from village to village, eventually dumping the second car at the village of Boot, when he was then pursued on foot by the police, who then found him in woodland not far from Boot, and firearm was found nearby, and what that implies is that he shot himself dead. The manhunt, of course, is now over, but what of the investigation? That, of course, is at a very early stage. The police, at this stage, really don't know why this man went on from here to kill further. It's something which is an enormous task for them. We've had hundreds of officers involved throughout the day in the manhunt, and now we have dozens of detectives working on the investigation. And at the moment, we simply don't know what led to this series of crimes throughout what is normally an extremely peaceful county. A county, I've got to say, where the crime rate is much lower than the national average. And this is a very peaceful town. Whitehaven is a harbour town, home to 25,000 people. And that actually makes it quite a large town in this part of the world. We're not far from the Lake District National Park, and of course, at this time of year and onwards, the population is swelled enormously by visitors, but 25,000 people, and everybody I've spoken to here today has said the same thing. This doesn't happen in Whitehaven. Well, sadly, it does.
Chris Stewart, for now, thank you. We'll be back to Whitehaven for that police press conference when it starts. We were expecting it to start at 5, but we'll return there as soon as it does. Let's just bring you some pictures that are just coming into us, or have just come into us, of Boot. Now, we think that this may be the area where the body of Derek Bird was found. You can see, I think, a police tent there, a forensics tent, just in the distance there, in this wooded area. Police confirming, yes, a lot of police activity there, but police confirming this lunchtime that the body of a man believed to be Derek Bird had been found in woodland just close to the village of Boot, a firearm close by. It's thought that he killed himself. So a lot of police activities you can see there today after that trail of shootings in Cumbria, which have left at least 5 people dead and several injured. In fact, let's just pick up on the condition of the injured, because some of those wounded were taken to West Cumberland Hospital in Whitehaven, and our correspondent Glenn Campbell joins us live from there now. Glenn, what is the latest you're hearing about the condition of these wounded, how seriously wounded they are?
Well, there's very little information of that kind coming out of the West Cumberland Hospital at this stage, although we are expecting a news conference here at 6 o'clock, about an hour after the police-led news conference in the town of Whitehaven. So we expect to get more details from hospital officials and possibly from medics at that stage. Obviously a large number of casualties in this incident, some of them being treated here at the West Cumberland Hospital this afternoon. There are relatives here at the hospital, relatives and staff generally too upset to speak following the events of this afternoon. I spoke a short time ago with a chaplain who's been comforting some of those involved, some of those who have relatives affected, and he simply said it's just not fair.
And the nature of these injuries, as you say, we hope to hear a little later on, Glenn, but it's not clear either, is it, whether we're dealing with shotgun injuries here or rifle injuries, and quite how grave those injuries are.
That's right, we don't know the extent of the injuries, we don't know how seriously those who are injured, what condition they are in. We expect more details of that as the afternoon unfolds. I think we can expect that at least in some cases we are dealing with gunshot wounds. There has been a lot of activity over the course of the last hour or so here at West Cumberland Hospital while I've been on site, an emergency ambulance arriving, another departing with a patient, presumably a patient transfer. Obviously I can't say if these cases are directly linked to the shootings that have taken place across West Cumbria this afternoon, but certainly a lot of activity at the hospital and an air ambulance toing and froing from the site as well.
OK, Glenn, well, with the latest from there for now, thank you very much. We'll return, of course, to that for that press conference when it starts. Let's just bring you a new picture that has come in of Derek Bird that I think we can bring you now. Derek Bird, obviously, I think, pictured here in a pub, but we're hearing from people neighbours who lived close by to him and people who knew him that he was a very quiet, unassuming man, 52 years old. We believe he was a divorced father, but not very much more information has emerged about him in the last few hours. But this, another picture of Derek Bird, the man believed to be the gunman in this shooting rampage today. His body, police say, was found near the village of Boot, and a gun found close by as well. Our correspondent Chris Buckler has been to Boot in Cumbria, and he's been speaking to the landlord of the local pub there, who described the events leading up to the discovery of Derek Bird's body.
Derek Bird was found just about half a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile from here. I've just been to the scene there. There were a number of police officers, including armed police officers, huge numbers of them. A major operation taking place there, and just a short distance away, of course, a number of people getting on with their days. It's been a very busy day in Cumbria. The weather has brought out many tourists, and even coming here today, it's been just bizarre to see the number of people who were walking along these streets. And of course, that was the concern as Derek Bird was making his way down from Whitehaven to here. With me is Sean King, who's from the Boot Inn, one of the pubs around here. I've just been up to one of the other pubs, and they say that they went into complete lockdown when this was happened. Can you tell us what happened here?
Sure, well, it was pretty much the same for us, and say we were alerted by the breaking news on the TV, and we got a phone call shortly afterwards from the police advising us that they thought he was on his way up here, and that we should get people inside. So that's what we did, and we got people in the pub and kept it more or less locked down. We were at an access point to the fells here, so there were still people trickling down that weren't aware that anything was going on at first before the police arrived. So we informed them that there was something going on and brought them into the pub where they could keep up with the news.
And I talked about the police presence there. It was a huge police presence.
Sure. Very shortly after that, the sirens and the police cars coming up the valley, there was lots and lots of them, and with a couple of helicopters as well. At first, thought they were just doing a wide search. I thought they were pursuing the fella through the valley. But it became apparent over the next hour that he was around and about here. In fact, whilst I was bringing some people inside, I spoke to a couple of armed response officers who took a wrong turn and they said that he'd ditched his car just 200 yards up the road, and that he was in the woods around and about. So the whole thing kind of escalated. Then the tension increased, and he was really wanting to get people inside and away from the windows. The stories that we'd heard, he'd been taking random pot shots at either people in buildings or in cars or anything. So although we felt safe and secure in there, everybody had one eye on the windows as well as one eye on the TV.
I was going to say, it must have been a very frightening situation. I've just been inside your pub there, and you've got BBC News on at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, you're watching this all playing out inside the pub, but it's all playing out outside your window.
Sure, as I say, I mean, in the pub you could feel the whole thing reverberating with the helicopters coming down low towards the end. It really did feel as though they were kind of catching up with him and maybe flushing him through this way. As approaching 2 o'clock, I was on the phone to somebody else in the media, and I heard a shot outside at 2 o'clock. It felt to me as though that was something, and it didn't carry on. There was no gunfight. Very shortly afterwards, the air ambulance helicopter landed in the field just over the road there, quickly attended by some police vehicles and an ambulance. Some kind of transfer went on, and they flew off very quickly. And within moments on the news, they'd let us know that they'd got his body, and then we found out that he'd shot himself. And
well, I mean, the thing is that the scale of this tragedy is still being worked out, but even close to you, one of the pub owners close to you is actually, he had his hand shot, is that right?
Sure, again, I heard early on, and you don't really know what's true or not. I'd had people phoning me to see if I was all right, because the landlord from up at Boot had been shot. I was happy to tell people that I was okay, but very concerned to find out that Harry, who'd been in Seascale, I'm not sure what he was doing there, whether he was doing some banking or some other kind of business, had just been shot randomly by this fella pulling up at the side of the car and letting loose.
Well, that was the landlord of the Boot Inn speaking to Chris Buckler there in the village of Boot. Well, attention will now inevitably turn to the availability of firearms in this country. Although latest figures from the Home Office suggest that the number of legitimately held firearms has dropped significantly over the past 30 years, there are more than 1.3 million gun licences held in England and Wales. Last year, almost 575,000 gun licences were granted. In 1979, that figure was more than 782,000. Well, let's get more with our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford. Shooting sprees such as the one today, Daniel, mercifully rare. One thinks back to Hungerford and Dunblane. Gun control really very tight in this country.
Yes, I mean, it's really one of the tightest regimes in the world. If you compare it to the United States, where there's almost no strict regime at all, then we are massively much tighter and much tighter than elsewhere in Europe. And one of the reasons why we have such a tight regime is that both after the Hungerford massacre in 1987, when automatic weapons were banned, effectively automatic rifles were banned, and there was a big tightening on the kinds of shotguns that could be held. And then after the Dunblane massacre of 1996, when handguns were effectively banned in Britain, apart from for the police and the armed forces, there's been a massive reduction in the kinds of weapons that you can hold. But of course, there are still lots of people in rural communities, in shooting clubs, particularly holding shotguns. Those statistics that you were quoting there are to do with shotguns, and lots of people have shotguns. There are 9,000 registered shotgun owners in Cumbria alone. So although we do have very tight rules and very stringent checks on people, there are still a lot of weapons being held in Britain. And of course, the issue for the pro-gun lobby, if you like, is don't ban us, because every now and then some nutter comes along, in their words. You know, they wish that they shouldn't be focused on every time there's an incident like this.
And people with legitimate firearms very closely monitored by the police on an annual check-up basis. But outside the main conurbations, what are the predictions about illegally held weapons?
Well, there aren't a great deal of illegally held weapons outside of the big cities. There are a very, very large number of illegally held weapons in particularly London, Manchester, in the West Midlands. There is a big issue around illegally held weapons, and many people in the gun lobby say that's where you should be focusing your efforts. But it is, of course, the Hungerfords and now these shootings in Cumbria today that tend to drag the attention back onto rural communities and the number of weapons that are being held in rural communities, where they do tend to be legitimately held. I mean, it should be said, we don't know at this point whether Derek Bird's weapon was a legitimately held weapon and whether or not he had a licence, or whether in fact it was a shotgun. We believe it was. But the focus will go back onto them, and it'll be a difficult times ahead for the people who enjoy shooting as a hobby.
But of course different restrictions for people who hold shotguns and indeed for rifles as well. But it'll be very easy, won't it, to check up what sort of documentation he had for any weapon that he might have held.
Yes, I would imagine the police have immediately made those checks, so they just haven't been able to tell us yet what his situation was in terms of whether or not he had legally held weapons or whether this was some kind of weapon that was held illegally. I mean, it has to be said that, you know, it looks as if a lot of these victims were shot in the face and probably with a shotgun. Some people might think, well, shotguns are used for shooting birds, but they can cause very fatal, very unpleasant injuries.
Yeah, well, some people have pointed out a sniper rifle, but the police hopefully will make that clear.
Yes, we'll hopefully learn later on today what kind of weapon was used, certainly in the days ahead.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much. Daniel Sanford, Home Affairs correspondent there. Well, Nick Howe is a senior lecturer in criminal investigation at Birmingham City University, a former police superintendent, firearms commander. And I'd like to pick up some of those points raised with Daniel there. I mean, presumably it's very difficult to plan for any event like this.
I think almost impossible. Clearly the police service have learnt the lesson from Hungerford and Dublin, and not least of which because armed response vehicles are now available where officers are armed permanently 24/7 and can attend immediately to incidents.
And what about the presence of firearms teams and how close they are? Because would, in this scenario, firearms teams have been in Cumbria, or would have they had to have been driven in or flown in from elsewhere?
As I said before, in most shire forces there will be somewhere between 2 and 3 armed response vehicles on the road 24 hours a day. That gives you a limited capability to respond to emerging incidents, i.e. as we've seen today. Outside that, they will have on-call arrangements where they will call a full firearms team of probably 15 to 20 officers, but that could probably take about an hour and a half at least to muster in a county like Cumbria. Outside that, they will have mutual aid arrangements and can liaise with neighbouring forces who could also send additional firearm support if required. Firearm
laws, as you were saying, very tight in this country, but what about the mental health of owners of guns legally held? How often is that checked?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. The firearms, for either a Section 1 firearm under the Firearms Act, so that's either a handgun or a rifle, or indeed a shotgun outside Section 1 firearms, the licence lasts for 5 years. In order to get a licence, you've got to be deemed a fit and proper person. That requires references and medical support. But you know as well as I do, someone's mental state can change literally within minutes or hours.
And as somebody who has been a firearms officer and commander indeed, how difficult is it for your men on the ground when you're hunting a gunman at large like this?
It's a major challenge. I mean, in the first stage, they will be seeking to identify who's responsible, and the details on this particular case seem to emerge fairly quickly without preempting any subsequent inquiry. The next issue they've got to do is locate the individual, and that can be a major challenge in an urban area, fast-moving, in vehicles and on foot. Obviously with the assistance of helicopters, armed response vehicles. But what I would say is that the vast majority of police officers responding to this incident would have been unarmed and would have had to show some degree of courage and bravery in being put forward into the scene where they knew someone was with a firearm.
Nick Howe, Senior Lecturer in Criminal Investigations at Birmingham City University, thank you very much for speaking to us this afternoon. 5:23. Well, David Cameron has been describing today's shooting by that gunman in Cumbria. He called it a tragic event. He was speaking at the start of his first Commons question time as Prime Minister, where he was also pressed on his plans for a married couple's tax allowance. Let's get more from our Chief Political Correspondent, Laura Kunsberg, who joins us now live from Westminster. A very sombre PMQs today, Laura.
Yes, it was indeed, Tim. News of this dreadful sequence of events starts circulating here in Westminster in the hour or so in the run-up to Prime Minister's questions, which was happening a little later than normal at 3 o'clock this afternoon. And David Cameron, at the beginning of his first ever session at the dispatch box in Prime Minister's questions, in the top job in the land,
Laura,
made
I'm
a
afraid
very
we're going
short
to leave
statement.
you because we're going to go straight back to Whitehaven. We've got this press conference now, just about to start. DCC Stuart Hyde reading a statement. Also Nigel Calvert, Associate Director of Public Health.
Yes. This is Deputy Chief Constable Stuart Hyde, who's here to give us the latest update. Mr. Hyde.
First of all, thank you for your patience. Sorry for the delay. As I said earlier, our condolences go out to the families and the friends of those who have been affected by the horrific incidents that unfolded today. These are local people, the local police, the local citizens that knew the people that were both injured and killed today. This has been a most exceptional and challenging incident that Cumbria has had to deal with. And so soon after the fatal crash on the A66 in West Cumbria last week. This has shocked the people of Cumbria and around the country to the core. The body of Derek Bird was located in a wooded area near Boot at approximately 1:40 today. And at this time we believe he took his own life. No shots were fired by police officers. Throughout the day we have been dealing with a very fast-paced operation that stretched over 3 hours, and emergency services responded during very difficult, challenging circumstances. And we are currently attending somewhere in the region of 30 different crime scenes. We can, however, confirm that from our current indications that 12 people have lost their lives, plus Derek Bird. 25 people are also receiving treatment in West Cumberland, Carlisle and Newcastle hospitals for a range of injuries. We are at an early stage of this investigation. We're not able to understand at this stage the real motivation behind it or establish whether this was a premeditated or a random attack. We are working hard to support the families of those involved, and our focus now is on gathering as much evidence as possible to build up a clear picture of exactly what has occurred this morning. The nature of this incident has stretched the constabulary, and thanks to the support of our colleagues at the Civil Nuclear Police and surrounding forces, we were able to provide a response and to start our investigation. Detective Superintendent Ian Golding is now leading a full and thorough investigation to find out exactly what happened and why, and will look into Mr. Bird's history, his access to firearms and his motivation for the shootings. It would be wrong of me to speculate at this stage, however. The circumstances of this tragedy and the gravity of it dictates that we have a full and comprehensive investigation and try to understand why someone would want to take so many lives in such a short space of time. I'd like to appeal to members of the public with friends and family in the West Cumbria area to ensure that they are safe and well. If you cannot make contact with relatives or you are not sure if they're safe, please contact our helpline 0800 096 0095. Anyone with information that can help us to understand Mr. Bird's movements and his actions this morning are asked to contact us on our force number 0845 33 00 247. Whilst this was a terrifying and horrific incident, it is by its nature very unusual, both locally, regionally and nationally. Cumbria prides itself on being a safe place to work, to play and to enjoy life. Cumbria is a tightly knit community covering some of the most beautiful countryside in the land. That's its strength as much as the people that live and visit here. It remains one of the safest areas of the UK and is very much open for business, for tourism, despite the tragic circumstances of the last few hours. Finally, my thoughts rest with the family, the friends and the colleagues of those who have lost their lives today or have been injured in this tragic event.
Mr. Hyde, there's been some suggestion that the first killings may actually have happened yesterday evening. Could you tell us about that, please?
I haven't got any information to that effect at this stage.
Are any of his relatives dead?
What I can say is that we'll be able to give you a lot more information in relation to each of the people that have lost their lives. I don't want to give any of that information yet. We're still gathering evidence. As you can see behind you, we're still investigating each of the many scenes. It is going to be a very long and complicated process. I apologise that I can't give you all that detail straight away, but we will get that detail to you in time.
Have you yet been able to
have a licence for the gun?
Can I say that his possession of firearms will be part of the investigation. We'll be looking how and why he was in possession of them, what his motivation was as well. That's part of the investigation.
How many guns was it?
There were two weapons. We have recovered both of them, and that's all part of our investigation.
Were they shotguns or firearms?
All I can say at this stage is that the two weapons have been recovered. They are safe, and we're going to conduct a full investigation to find out all the circumstances surrounding this case.
Have you yet been able to speak to all the relatives of those people who've been killed and injured?
At this stage, we are still talking to people who've relatives of friends and colleagues who have been injured in the shooting. It will take us some time to be able to identify everyone that needs to be spoken to.
You said no real motivation, but is there any indication at all?
I said that I wouldn't give a guess as to his motivation. That's going to be part of the investigation.
Are you confident no more bodies will be found?
At this stage, as I said, we've recovered 12 bodies and plus Mr. Bird, and we're continuing to search to see if there's anything else that we need to recover.
So 12 victims plus Mr. Bird makes 13
That's
correct.
Dead. That's 13 dead people this morning. Yes.
Were each of those people...
Any breakdown in terms of age range, men and women?
At this stage, I wouldn't like to do that, no.
Were those people found individually, or were more than one person killed?
All I can say is they were found in a range of circumstances. We have 30 different scenes that we're looking at. We've got a lot of evidence to recover, and I hope over the next day or two to be able to provide you a little bit more information that will clarify exactly what has happened in this very, very tragic case.
I understand it's extremely difficult for you, but our information is that the first killing may have been targeted, and after that the killings were random. Is that correct?
I said earlier that I wouldn't speculate on motivation. I also won't speculate on any of the people that have died, whether it was deliberate or whether it was a random killing.
What condition are the 25 injured in?
They're in a range of conditions, certainly receiving the best attention that the health service can provide for them at the moment.
Any of those injuries like that?
Thank you very much, yeah. I think Mr. Hyde's just got to go back to the police station now, but we've got Dr. Nigel Calvert, who's the Associate Director of Public Health for NHS Cumbria, and who'll be reading a statement to you, as well as supported by Derek Cartwright, who's the Director of Emergency Services for the North West Ambulance Service.
Thanks very much. Thank you. This has been a major tragedy to which the NHS and other agencies in Cumbria have responded as one. The North West Ambulance Service, as we will be hearing, declared a major incident today after receiving a high number of calls reporting gunshot wounds. Ambulances supported by air ambulances and the RAF tended to patients across West Cumbria and transported them to various hospitals. Both of the area's air ambulances were deployed, and RAF support brought the total number of helicopters involved to 6. At the outset of this incident, hospital services were placed on standby to receive casualties at Carlisle's Cumberland Infirmary and Whitehaven's West Cumberland Hospital, as well as other hospitals in South Cumbria, North Lancashire and Scotland. West Cumberland Hospital remains on standby to receive any additional casualties which may be identified as part of the ongoing search effort that we've heard about. This does remain a very fast-moving situation, and final casualty numbers cannot be confirmed until the search has been completed. We're setting up effective and coordinated services for people traumatised by the appalling events of today. This will include support for GPs in the area, who we expect will receive a number of calls associated with psychological effects of today's events. There will be a stepping up of support available from dedicated mental health teams as well in the county. Finally, on behalf of NHS Cumbria, I'd like to express our condolences to everybody caught up in today's events.
Mr. Calvert, you suggested that the death toll might actually rise. Why is that? Are some people so critically injured?
Well, the most up-to-date information I have is that, as we've heard, 12 people plus the gunman, I understand, have died. The information I had was that 25 people have been hospitalised. I mean, these may change, and 3 of those people were critical. I've no specific information on their condition.
Can you give us some idea of how difficult it is to cope with such an extraordinary event?
Well, it is. I mean, you just wonder, you know, when it's going to end in West Cumbria. Really, the last 6 or 7 months have been extremely traumatic. You know, we saw the coach crash last week, and then the floods, you know, not very many months ago. So, you know, NHS Cumbria does play its part in the multi-agency response to these things, but you know, I think so far it's going as well as we could expect in such appalling circumstances.
So you're saying the injured have been taken as far as Scotland and South Lancashire? It's a
that's
huge
right.
spread, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, any individual area has a fairly limited capacity, you know, to deal with serious injuries such as this. but there's been close liaison going on with the acute trust locally and with trusts in other areas, that's right.
What effect has this had on your staff?
Well, it's early days. I mean, clearly it's a very traumatic thing to have to deal with, and staff welfare will be something we're going to have to deal with in the weeks ahead. I mean, I have no specific information at this stage.
Have anybody been shot more than once, or is it single gunshot wounds?
I'm sorry, I don't have that level of detail. Sorry.
Great, thank you very much, guys. And
Thank you, Mr. Calvert.
We've just got Richard Parry, who's the Corporate Director of Adults and Local Services from Cumbria County Council, who's got a short statement and will address a couple of questions for you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today, Cumbria has seen a tragic series of events. The area affected will take many months and years to recover, and Cumbria County Council is offering support to communities while they try and come to terms with what has happened. The County Council is offering full support to staff and their families who have been affected by this tragedy. Clearly, a huge part of the county has been affected, and there's been significant disruption during the day. We anticipate that may continue whilst police investigations are underway. However, our priority is to both continue delivering services as normal and to offer support to communities who've been affected. We'll be working closely with the police and with NHS colleagues to ensure that the support is available over the days, weeks and months to come. Thank you.
Richard Parry there. As we now know, 12 people have now died on what's been a truly extraordinary day here in West Cumbria, a day which started out so peacefully in this town of Whitehaven, and at 10:30 we had the first victim shot dead in a taxi rank. Not far behind me, the body of that man is still lying there. From then on, Derek Bird has gone from village to village to village on a killing spree. We were told in Prime Minister's question time that 5 people had died. I said earlier that my information was that it was more than 5, and sadly, my information has turned out to be correct. 12 people dead, the gunman dead, 25 people injured. A lot of questions still to be answered there. We can appreciate the difficulty of Cumbria Police to do that, to give us more information. But that's where we know. I'm now trying to speak to Jamie Reid. I'm afraid I've lost him for the moment, so try and let me tell you more. I do have somebody with me now here.
Let's just talk for a moment.
Can I just bring in Reverend John Bannister here? Reverend Bannister, it has been what we've just heard, 12 people dead.
I'm totally shocked by it. I really didn't imagine that we'd be looking at anything as dreadful as this. You know. It's just an awful time for this community of West Cumbria. We're still reeling from the disaster with the Keswick school bus crash. The majority of children on that bus were from here in Whitehaven and the surrounding villages, and then to be faced with this in such a short time is truly dreadful.
That's great. Reverend Bannister, thank you very much for joining us. This is a day which started in shock at 10:30. It's ending, I'm afraid, in despair. 12 people dead, the gunman dead, 25 injured.
The latest, thank you very much. So 12 people killed, as Chris was saying, including the gunman, Derek Bird. 25 people wounded, 3 of them critical. I think we can bring you some pictures, actually, of the village of Rowra, which is where Derek Bird lived. Now, Rowra is near Frizzington, not too far away, and reports coming in with a little bit more detail about Derek Bird, 52-year-old, some reports saying that he'd recently become a grandfather. We understand that he was a self-employed cab driver. Neighbours describe him as quiet and fairly popular. Nobody really had any idea about why something like this could have happened. According to some reports on the ground, he was divorced, a father of 2, living alone, that he would go out, according to other people. He was fairly popular. He was known as Birdie. He was known to a lot of people. He worked for a cab firm and had been in the community for quite a few years. Now, some reports suggest that there'd been something of an argument, a feud with fellow taxi drivers, and this might have been the catalyst for what happened today. Other people saying that he enjoyed shooting, which suggests that he held a licensed gun, and scuba diving as well. But much more, of course, to emerge about Derek Bird over the next few hours. And the shootings in Cumbria, the scale of those shootings in Cumbria, only just revealed now, because a little earlier the Prime Minister David Cameron had believed that 5 people had been killed and several wounded. That number, of course, has risen dramatically, but a very sombre tone at the first Prime Minister's questions of this Parliament. And our chief political correspondent, Laura Kunzberg, was listening to those exchanges today. Laura.
Thanks very much indeed, Tim. Well, you're right. During Prime Minister's questions just after 3 o'clock, David Cameron used his first ever occasion in that role at the dispatch box to announce to the House of Commons at that stage that at least 5 people had been killed in this terrible series of events. That number now, though, appallingly much higher, to 12 people and the gunman himself. This is David Cameron and his Home Secretary Theresa May's first big domestic tragedy like this that they have had to deal with. And earlier, David Cameron told MPs what he knew.
Mr. Speaker, the House will also be alarmed and shocked by the events unfolding in Cumbria today. Police were called to Whitehaven at 10:35 this morning after shots were fired by a man, and I regret to report that a number of people have been shot and that at least 5 people have died. I can confirm that the body of a gunman has been found by the police. The Chief Constable of Cumbria is working closely with other forces and other emergency services to ensure a coordinated response to these rapidly moving events. The government will do everything it possibly can to help the local community and those affected and to keep the House informed. A full statement will be made to Parliament tomorrow. When lives and communities are suddenly shattered in this way, our thoughts should be with all those caught up in these tragic events, especially the families and the friends of those killed or injured.
Now, David Cameron's sentiments, his expressions of shock and thoughts for the community and the families of those who've been killed or been injured were echoed by other MPs, by Harriet Harman, who's the standing-in leader for the Labour Party, and other members of Parliament who spoke in that first session of Prime Minister's questions. But we do expect the Home Secretary Theresa May to make a full statement to MPs here in the House of Commons tomorrow. The Home Office and Downing Street have been working very closely together in the last few hours. The government does not at this point either know or wish to make public whether or not Derek Bird was licensed to hold a weapon or weapons. That, of course, will be a critical piece of information as events unfold in the coming days. But Theresa May will be coming here to update MPs on everything that the government is doing to try to deal with this and it may well be that we hear from her before that.
Laura Kunzberg, thank you very much. Laura Kunzberg there at Westminster. Just a bit of information coming through from the Press Association naming one of the victims now, the first person to be named, a farmer's son, named as Gary Purdham, shot by Derek Bird. Let's go back to Whitehaven. Chris Stewart there with the local MP, Jamie Reid. Chris.
Yes, Jamie Reid was here rather than with many of his colleagues in Westminster. And Mr. Reid, a truly extraordinary day has unfolded here.
It's the kind of day that people in this part of the world never expect to experience. We're used to seeing it in other parts of the country, but we never thought it would happen here. We're devastated, we're stupefied, it's tragic, and we never thought it would happen here. We can't believe that it has.
There is a real, almost tangible shock here now.
Well, this is the kind of community which is exceptionally close-knit, not just between individuals or between individual families, but between towns going back generations, even centuries. We've worked together, lived together, died together. We really can't. You hurt one of us, you hurt all of us, and this is the kind of place where still, up until today, you can leave your door open. So this kind of thing really does shake us to our very foundations.
We had what we thought was very tough firearms legislation in place. I've got to say that it doesn't seem to have worked, does it?
Well, that legislation introduced after the incidents in Dunblane some years ago, I think we do have to go back and look at. I don't think today's the time for speculating on where the law has or hasn't worked. First and foremost, our absolute thoughts, prayers, hearts go out to the families of those whose lives have been taken in this unspeakable tragedy. But
I'm sorry, we seem to have lost the sound there from Whitehaven. Our correspondent Chris Stewart speaking to the local MP there, Jamie Reid. Well, some of those wounded in the shooting were taken to West Cumberland Hospital in Whitehaven. Our correspondent Glenn Campbell joins us from there now. And Glenn, we were hearing a little bit more information about the nature of those injuries and indeed how serious some of those conditions are.
That's right, and most of that information coming from the news conference that you've been covering. We expect to hear more details from the hospital. The Deputy Chief Executive due to speak to us, we think, at 7 o'clock tonight. It had been thought we'd have more details at 6, but details coming through at 7 from here at the West Cumberland Hospital, where, as you say, some of the 25 or possibly more people who've been injured are being treated. The range of injuries, of course, from those related to gunshots, and at the other end of the scale there's a lot of grief and pain, not just being suffered by those directly caught up in events across West Cumbria this afternoon, but by their relatives. Some of those that I've come across simply too upset to speak. But one of the local curates in this area, the Reverend Tom Parsons, has been helping relatives deal with the situation this afternoon. Just tell us, from your point of view, how events unfolded.
I've just spent this afternoon at the hospital really with one person watching tragedy unfold in the most appalling way, and really I'm left speechless. It's a senseless and extraordinary thing that has happened, and seeing somebody try to come to terms with that this afternoon brought me in. Our words actually fail me.
And without giving away personal details of the particular case you've been dealing with, we're talking here about a family who have lost a loved one.
I think that there are going to be a lot of families. I saw tragedy unfold in one person's life and family. That will ripple outwards, and you multiply that by however many have been killed in this tragedy, and the grief is appalling.
We all confront grief at some point in our lives, but can you give us a sense of what people caught up in today's events are going through, how raw those emotions are?
I don't know that I can. I've never experienced anything of the sort in my own life, and I've seen people today express a very, very severe grief and trauma, shock, disbelief, and I think that's the overwhelming feeling, is absolute disbelief. Not just that this is a very peaceful, lovely community to live in, that something so awful could have happened here, of all places, but just you don't expect this of anybody, to be able to do something so appalling as what's been done. So I think shock, grief, and I'm no expert, I just feel a bit of it, having seen a bit of it this afternoon.
And what's your sense of how they're handling things here at this hospital?
I've been blown away by it, and I think that this community as a whole is a very, very caring place, and no doubt people will pull round in a wonderful way. And the doctors and the nurses and the police, I've seen them do some very, very difficult things this afternoon, and it will have taken a huge toll on them to do it, but they've been brilliant.
Can you give us a sense of some of the things that they've been up against?
I don't think it's right to go into all the details of how exactly they've responded in particular circumstances, but I think sometimes having to break news to people and having to remain in a calm frame and do that with all the emotions going on within their own lives. And in a community like this, of course, people living locally will have been fearing at certain stages of the day for where their own loved ones are. And coming so recently after the appalling crash last week for the Keswick school bus heading back to this very region, really some of the feelings must be so raw with them, and I'm lost for words again, really, as to how brilliantly they've done, in my estimation.
You mentioned the sense of community here. How will people pull together and support one another through this tragedy?
I don't know this community's... maybe it has in some point in history. I don't know how a community prepares for something like this, but people love to talk here. People love to gather around together. Families are very close. Families are often very local. And there will be a huge amount of support, not just professionally, but in some ways, more importantly in the long term, from families and friends right around this very loving area.
And obviously the focus initially is very much on those who've been injured physically, but from dealing with events in the past, I guess the psychological effects can last an awful long time.
I think there are things that have happened today that people, in some ways, will maybe never get over completely. This date will always live in people's minds as a tragic and an awful day. I think people, and in a time like this, need to be convinced that they will come through it. They will. But quite how that will happen and the road that some of them will have to walk is going to be very, very painful indeed.
Reverend Tom Parsons, thanks very much indeed for talking to us live at the West Cumberland Hospital, where some of the 25 or more injured are being treated. We hope to have more details on the injuries and the condition of those patients. Obviously others being treated elsewhere in Cumbria and beyond, and more details expected from the hospital here, from the Chief Executive, the Deputy Chief Executive rather, at 7 o'clock.
Glenn Campbell with the latest. Thank you very much for now. We're also expecting a statement from the Home Secretary, Theresa May, in a few minutes' time. This is the scene live at the Home Office, and we'll cross there, of course, as soon as she starts speaking about those killings. 12 people killed, and the gunman Derek Bird, who took his own life. 25 people injured, 3 critically. Well, let's also just bring you a picture of the first victim of Derek Bird, who's been named locally as Gary Purdom. Now, he is a farmer's son, one of the victims of Derek Bird. And one person said the farmer's son was in his early 30s and had 2 children. Apparently, Gary Purdom had been trimming hedges with his uncle just before midday when Derek Bird drove past, wound down his car window and shot him. This, the picture of Gary Purdom, son of the farmer John Purdom of the Low Boonwood farm. Well, in a statement given about half an hour ago, Deputy Chief Constable Stuart Hyde described the shootings as truly exceptional.
As I said earlier, our condolences go out to the families and the friends of those who have been affected by the horrific incidents that unfolded today. These are local people, the local police, the local citizens that knew the people that were both injured and killed today. This has been a most exceptional and challenging incident that Cumbria has had to deal with. And so soon after the fatal crash on the A66 in West Cumbria last week. This has shocked the people of Cumbria and around the country to the core. The body of Derek Bird was located in a wooded area near Boot at approximately 1:40 today. And at this time we believe he took his own life. No shots were fired by police officers. Throughout the day we have been dealing with a very fast-paced operation that stretched over 3 hours, and emergency services responded during very difficult, challenging circumstances, and we are currently attending somewhere in the region of 30 different crime scenes. We can, however, confirm that from our current indications that 12 people have lost their lives, plus Derek Bird. 25 people are also receiving treatment in West Cumberland, Carlisle and Newcastle hospitals for a range of injuries. We are at an early stage of this investigation. We're not able to understand at this stage the real motivation behind it or establish whether this was a premeditated or a random attack. We are working hard to support the families of those involved, and our focus now is on gathering as much evidence as possible to build up a clear picture of exactly what has occurred this morning. The nature of this incident has stretched the constabulary, and thanks to the support of our colleagues at the Civil Nuclear Police and surrounding forces, we were able to provide a response and to start our investigation. Detective Superintendent Ian Golding is now leading a full and thorough investigation to find out exactly what happened and why, and will look into Mr. Bird's history, his access to firearms and his motivation for the shootings. It would be wrong of me to speculate at this stage, however. The circumstances of this tragedy and the gravity of it dictates that we have a full and comprehensive investigation and try to understand why someone would want to take so many lives in such a short space of time. I'd like to appeal to members of the public with friends and family in the West Cumbria area to ensure that they are safe and well. If you cannot make contact with relatives or you are not sure if they're safe, please contact our helpline 0800 096 0095.
Detective Chief Constable Stuart Hyde giving that statement in the last half an hour. Let's just cross back to Whitehaven and just get the final thoughts really for this hour from Chris Stewart, our correspondent, who's been following all these shootings today. A county, a town in absolute turmoil after so many deaths there.
It's absolutely shocking. The first shooting happened at 10:30. We were told about that at 10:45. About an hour after that, we were told there was a second death. That wasn't confirmed. David Cameron then said in Prime Minister's Question Time that there were 5 deaths. My information at that time was that there were more than 5 deaths, and very sadly that has proved to be true. 12 people dead, the gunman dead, and 25 people injured on what has been an extraordinary and truly dreadful day here in West Cumbria.
It's beginning to emerge. Chris, the first names of the victims beginning to emerge. I'm not sure if you're hearing me. Chris, can you hear me? I think we've lost communications, I'm afraid, with our correspondent Chris Stewart there. The gunman himself, Derek Bird, has been named, or has been lots more information coming in locally about him. We hear he was a divorced father of 2. Different pictures emerging of him as well. Divorced father of 2. Local reports suggesting he was also recently a grandfather. He'd been working as a taxi driver in the area for more than 20 years. People say locally that he was fairly popular everyone is completely at a loss to explain what had happened. We've also heard in the last few moments that one person has been named locally, one of the victims, Gary Purdham, who is son of the farmer John Purdham. The Home Secretary, Theresa May, is now giving a statement. Let's listen to him.
I've spoken to Craig Mackey, the Chief Constable of Cumbria, on a number of occasions today, and he's updated me on these very serious and tragic events that have taken place. As the Prime Minister has said, our thoughts are with the families and friends of the victims of these shootings. It's a terrible incident that has taken place in Cumbria today, but I would like to pay tribute to the way in which the police and the emergency services have worked very closely together to deal with this incident. Now, as there is an ongoing investigation, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on the details. It's right that the facts come from the police, and they will be releasing further details as appropriate. However, they have already confirmed that 12 people have been killed and at least 25 have been injured. I can confirm that I will be making a statement to update the House of Commons tomorrow. In the meantime, I want the people of Cumbria to know that they have my support and they are in my thoughts. Thank you.
What resources is the Home Office able to offer West Cumbria Police, who are, after all, a pretty small rural police force?
As I say, I will be updating the House of Commons tomorrow in a statement that I will be making to the House. Thank you.
A brief statement from Theresa May, the Home Secretary, who, as she explained, will be giving more information tomorrow. But as we understand it, this evening, 12 people have been killed, including the gunman Derek Bird, 25 people wounded, 3 critically. Much more on that with Hugh at 6. Some weather now, Susan.
Thank you very much, Tim. Ours is a very quiet weather story across the UK at the moment. A lot of dry and sunny weather to come through the rest of today, the rest of the week, and for a good part of the weekend. Plenty of warm sunshine to be found outside now. And in fact, some of the cloud that we saw building today will melt away this evening. So if anything, you may see more in the way of sunshine in the next couple of hours. Through this evening and overnight tonight, we stay fine. Some patchy mist and fog, perhaps drifting into the coast of the northwest of England to the east of Northern Ireland, perhaps a little coming in off the North Sea as well. Quite cool in some spots, 2 to 7 degrees, the low in Norwich. Clear skies though set us up for plenty of sunshine tomorrow, and if anything, clearer skies tomorrow across the southern half of the UK, barely a cloud in the sky. Towards the north there will be some fair weather cloud around, but it's a dry day in prospect with some pretty impressive temperatures ranging from the high teens in the northwest of Scotland, much warmer today, than to the mid-20s in the southeast. And with more sunshine to come as we head towards the weekend, temperatures will continue to creep up. Just a chance of a few showers in the west in the next couple of days.
A mass shooting in Cumbria. 12 people are murdered and at least 25 injured. The gunman is named as Derek Bird, a local taxi driver.